The trend of academic redshirting continues to grow, with more parents trying to hold back kindergartners with summer birthdays, wanting to give them the perceived advantage of being one of the oldest rather than youngest in their class. But is this parental strategy misguided? Here with more is WSJ reporter Jennifer Wallace. Jennifer, thanks so much for being here. I have to start with a full disclosure by saying I have a 6-year-old kindergartner who was fully redshirted, so I am almost a subject for your story. I do find here in New York, though, that this has become the norm rather than the exception. Did you find that nationwide as well?
It's true. It's true. I have a question. Do you have a son?
Yes.
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 So boys are twice as likely to be held back than girls.
Interesting.
Nationwide, yeah.
And why is that, do you think?
Well, I think for boys, they look at it in terms of size and maturity.
And sports, I bet
and
that
sports.
factors into it.
Yes.
Interesting. Now, do you also find that there's a socioeconomic difference between who's redshirted and who's not?
So nationally, about 6% of children are redshirted each year. But when you sort of dig into the facts, you see a big discrepancy in low-income school districts and wealthier ones. So in Connecticut, for example, I found ranges from 2% to as much as 27% in wealthier neighborhoods.
Does that have partially something to do with the fact that in certain public school districts you have no choice? Your child has to go to kindergarten when they are in that age range?
I think that's definitely a factor, but I think even more than that is that it's expensive to have another year of childcare or another year of preschool tuition. So it's not an option for a lot of families.
Very, very good point. Now, experts seem to be a little divided on whether there is an advantage or not. What did you find?
Well, one researcher put it to me this way, that if you're redshirting as a shortcut to getting into Harvard, you're going to want to rethink that, because the research is really mixed. Just looking at redshirting studies, there's no study that points to a long-term advantage. But when you look at relative age, so older children in a class, not necessarily redshirted, there does seem to be an advantage. But on the other hand, there's research that says being the youngest in a class is an advantage.
Because you're sort of spurned, you're sort of encouraged to perform better, to keep up with your peers.
That's right.
I get that. I also see the problem with that kindergartner eventually growing up and realizing you held them back. So you've got to have a story. You can't say, oh, we didn't think you could cut it.
That's right. Someone I interviewed for this article, best-selling author Meg Meeker, makes that point. And she said, children eventually get to know why their parents did it.
Okay, my story is I have 2 boys, and the older one was 21 months older, and I felt like I wanted them 2 years apart.
I think that's a good answer.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that support. Thank you so much for being with us, Jennifer.